The US Senate has passed a bill to raise the government's debt ceiling, avoiding a potential default. The bill is now off to the president's desk for signature as investors turn their attention to a new jobs report.
The bill is passed.
A collective sigh of relief from lawmakers and Wall Street, with at least one financial catastrophe averted.
We've saved the country from the scourge of default.
After marathon votes, Thursday night, the Senate passed a bipartisan bill that allows the country to accrue even more debt. But the markets are happy for now.
We did get all this uncertainty regarding the debt ceiling out of the way.
If Congress didn't vote to suspend the debt limit, borrowing costs would have skyrocketed even more, and America's credit rating would have plunged. Now, the White House sees better days ahead. A new government report out Friday says 339,000 jobs were added in May, coming in much hotter than expected.
This is a surprising upswing, I think, relative to the last 4 months.
Government construction and healthcare jobs seeing most of those gains. In the Labor Department gave new upward revisions for March and April jobs, but unemployment showing a different picture, ticking up to 3.7%.
There's a huge increase in this report in the number of job losers. I would caution policymakers to realize that we're not out of the woods.
The labor market's strength could feed inflation, and that may force the Federal Reserve to hold interest rates steady or even hike them later this month.
Well, joining me live is Christian Datoc, White House correspondent for the Washington Examiner. Thank you very much, Christian, for joining us. So, yes, the debt ceiling, what's the next financial fight from here? I believe Joe Biden has a speech tonight at the Oval Office to discuss further.
That's correct, Janie. And after that speech, the president will sign this debt ceiling bill into law, avoiding a default this weekend. That doesn't prevent another financial showdown later in the year. Of course, the government isn't funded by this package, and Congress has to pass a series of appropriation bills to avoid a government shutdown. Based on what we are hearing from both the far left and the far right in Congress, those negotiations could be especially fraught, given that neither side got exactly what they wanted in the debt ceiling saga.
All right, and as I mentioned before, the markets are happy for now, but for how long do you think?
Well, there's a lot to see. Of course, the war in Ukraine factors in heavily to what's happening with not only U.S. but global markets. And we have to take President Biden's potential reelection or his failure to win in 2024 into account. All of this doesn't preclude the fact that Republicans are hammering the president, both those who jumped into the presidential race themselves, like Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis, and others who we expect to announce their candidacy later this month.
All right, and speaking of candidacies and the president, yesterday, Biden certainly said he's feeling fine now after he had a fall on stage in Colorado, but many people still posing that question of age. We know he is the nation's oldest serving president, 80. What do you think of this? Because when you look at his age, you look at Trump's age, only 4 years younger. Is age really a factor here?
Well, if you ask the leaders of the political parties, they'd say age is not a factor. If you can still do the job, you're capable of being president. But if you ask younger voters here in the U.S., age is certainly a factor. And that's not only because of the shifting politics, but it's because of what we saw yesterday at the Air Force Academy. President Biden has fallen multiple times since taking office, and former President Trump himself had his own share of slips and, moments where he seemed, let's be honest, too old to fill the position. So age is certainly a factor in the mind of voters. You also have to think about, God forbid, what would happen if someone who is 80 years old when they become president for either their second consecutive term or a second brokered term, will they be able to serve out the remainder of those 4 years? So it's not only a question of age in voters' minds, it's a question for the parties as to who those successors will be. Of course, former President Trump dumped Mike Pence from his presidential ticket. We don't know who his VP is, and Democrats have lots of questions about Kamala Harris's competency and ability to lead the nation.
The Democrats in the running at the moment, Marianne Williamson and Kennedy, what are your thoughts on both of them?
Well, both of them are polling higher than we thought at this point in time. It's very rare that a sitting president is successfully primaried, certainly unheard of in modern politics. That being said, they both espouse positions that are wildly different than Joe Biden. Robert Kennedy, of course, made his name to fame beyond his family, serving as an environmental lawyer, and he's become one of the largest vaccine skeptics in the country. Marianne Williamson, of course, pledges love and coming together. She is a self-help guru and someone who looks to buck the current political line and the party-dominated control in this country. She's a very similar candidate in that regard to Donald Trump back in 2016. I think it would be an extreme long shot if either of them were to secure the nomination, but they certainly are doing better than we thought they would at this point in time, and are probably polling stronger than the White House would like.
And what about former Vice President Mike Pence, expected to formally announce his running for 2024, along with the former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie? What are their chances, do you think?
That's right. Both Pence and Christie are expected to announce next week. I would give them even lower chances than Marianne Williamson or Robert Kennedy, mostly because of the size of the Republican field. You have Donald Trump taking up a solid 35 to 40% of the Republican electorate. You, of course, have Governor Ron DeSantis from Florida, who's viewed as the best challenger to unseat Trump. You've also got people like former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina. So just based on the number of Republican candidates who have already announced, I'd say folks like Pence, Christie, even Scott and Haley, who I previously mentioned, they're really viewed as afterthoughts right now and shaping up to be a big Trump-DeSantis showdown next year.
And finally, how is Trump's popularity looking at the moment?
He's holding strong. It's sort of surprising given all these legal issues that he's had to deal with over the past year and a half. But the more he's gone out and campaigned, and the more that Ron DeSantis has sort of seen his stock fallen since the November midterm elections from last year, it's looking more and more like Donald Trump is going to be the nominee again. There's a lot of time before primary votes are cast, of course, but if I had to bet right now who the Republican nominee would be, I would bet on Donald Trump.
All right. Well, yes, as you said, plenty of time, and great to see you and get your expertise. Thanks so much, Christian.